An older adult doesn't have to forget your name for something to be wrong. Sometimes the red flag is much smaller. They suddenly can't make ordinary choices. Difficulty making simple choices doesn't sound like a medical warning sign, but after 75, a sudden change in judgment, focus, or everyday decision-making can sometimes point to problems that deserve medical attention. It could be related to mild cognitive decline, medication side effects, depression, dehydration, infection, or a sudden condition like delirium. That's why a small change in decision-making should never be dismissed too quickly as just old age. Point 1. They hesitate over questions that used to have obvious answers. A subtle symptom many families miss is when an older adult begins hesitating over questions that used to be effortless. Questions like, "Are you hungry? Do you want to sit here? Or have you taken your morning pills?" suddenly lead to long pauses, uncertainty, or confusion. That may not sound alarming at first, but when someone repeatedly struggles with choices that used to feel automatic, it can suggest that their thinking is no longer working the way it used to. And that's exactly the kind of symptom that can be overlooked until it starts affecting daily life. Point 2. They start making routine tasks more complicated than they need to be. Another subtle clue is when an older adult begins overcomplicating tasks that used to be simple. They may struggle to decide what order to do things in, get stuck on minor details, or turn a very basic routine into something confusing and stressful. This can happen when planning, judgment, or mental flexibility are being affected. And while it may not seem dramatic at first, it can be one of those changes that slowly interferes with everyday independence. Point 3. They take much longer to answer simple questions. Aging can slow reaction time a little, and there's nothing unusual about taking an extra moment to think, but there's a difference between being thoughtful and suddenly needing a very long time to answer simple, familiar questions. You may ask, "Did you already eat lunch? Or would you like tea or coffee?" And instead of a quick answer, they pause for an unusually long time, look uncertain, or seem to lose track of the question itself. In some cases, they may answer with something unrelated or ask you to repeat a question they would have understood easily in the past. That kind of change can happen when attention, working memory, or mental processing speed are being affected. It doesn't automatically mean dementia, and it doesn't point to one single cause. But when a person over 75 becomes noticeably slower at handling very simple choices or questions, it may be a sign that their thinking is under strain in a way that deserves attention. Point 4. They begin making choices that don't fit the situation. Another overlooked sign is a change in everyday judgment. An older adult may start making choices that feel strangely out of step with the moment. They may put on heavy clothes in hot weather, skip a meal without realizing they haven't eaten, take the wrong medication at the wrong time, or refuse help even when they're clearly unwell. Everyone makes occasional mistakes, and one poor decision doesn't mean something serious is happening. The concern is when those choices begin to form a pattern, when decisions become noticeably less safe, less logical, or very different from the way that person normally behaves. A shift like this can happen for different reasons. It may be related to cognitive decline, but it can also happen with depression, medication side effects, infection, dehydration, or sudden confusion caused by illness. That's why changes in judgment should be taken seriously, especially if they appear alongside hesitation, confusion, or trouble managing routine tasks. Point 5. They keep changing their mind over very small decisions. One small but telling sign is when ordinary choices suddenly become a drawn-out struggle. A person may go back and forth over what to wear, what to eat, or whether they want to sit in one room or another. Choices that used to take seconds now seem to take several minutes. Point 6. They seem overwhelmed by too many options. Sometimes the problem isn't memory at all. It's that even a small number of options starts to feel mentally exhausting. A simple menu, a short grocery list, or two basic choices can suddenly leave them looking stuck, confused, or frustrated. Point 7. They forget the question before they answer it. You ask something simple, and before they can respond, they seem to lose track of what was asked. They may ask you to repeat it, answer a different question, or simply go quiet because the thought has slipped away. Point 8, they stop making decisions and let others decide everything. Some older adults don't become obviously confused. Instead, they start handing every choice over to someone else. Meals, clothing appointments, daily plans, things they used to decide on their own, are suddenly left for others to manage. Point 9. Familiar routines suddenly stop feeling automatic. One of the clearest warning signs is when an older adult no longer moves through familiar routines with the same ease. A morning routine they followed for years, getting dressed, taking medication, preparing breakfast, or getting ready to leave the house, starts to look slower, more confusing, fraught, or mentally draining. They may begin a task and then stop halfway. Unsure of what to do next, they may repeat a step, forget the order of a routine, or need reminders for things they once handled automatically. Sometimes the problem isn't memory in the usual sense. It's that the routine itself no longer feels organized in their mind. That kind of change can point to problems. With attention planning, sequencing, or executive function, the mental skills that help us move through daily life smoothly, and because routines are such a big part of independence, even subtle problems here can have a major effect on safety and quality of life. Point 10. They lose confidence in decisions they used to make. Every day, sometimes the first change isn't confusion. It's a sudden loss of confidence. A person who used to handle their own meals, clothing, medication, and daily schedule may start second-guessing every choice. They may repeatedly ask, "Do you think this is okay, or what should I do first?" Even in situations that once felt completely familiar. Of course, everyone asks for reassurance from time to time, but when an older adult suddenly seems unable to trust their own judgment in ordinary situations that change matters, it can happen when thinking becomes less sharp, but it can also happen with depression, anxiety, medication effects, poor sleep, or physical illness. The important thing is to notice the shift. If someone who used to make routine decisions comfortably now seems hesitant, dependent, or afraid of getting it wrong, that's not something to brush off too quickly. Point 11, their medication routine starts falling apart. Medication mistakes are one of the most practical signs that something may be changing. An older adult who used to manage their pills fairly well may suddenly start missing doses, taking the wrong pill, doubling up by accident, or forgetting whether they've taken anything at all. This matters for two reasons. First, it can be a clue that memory, attention, or decision-making is becoming more difficult. But second, medication problems can also make confusion worse. Some medicines, especially in older adults, can contribute to drowsiness, poor concentration, disorientation, falls, or sudden mental changes. So when medication routines start to break down, it's important not to treat it as a minor mistake. It may be one of the clearest signs that an older adult needs a closer look at both their thinking and their medication list